Kalimera Olas, or Kalispera, δεν ξέρω. It's great to be here. My name is Richard Mullane. I am the head of Impact at Investing for Purpose. We are a financial intermediary, and we connect impact investors with impactful companies here in Greece. I'm based in Athens. I think I believe what's called a love import. My wife is from Greece, so I couldn't be happier than to be based here. Also, it's lovely to be up in this region. I come every summer with my son to walk in the mountains around Vikos, so it's always lovely to be back and to be welcomed so warmly every time. Just a brief thank you to Involve, Alexandros and the team, and Jerry. It's fantastic to be part of this event and to have so many decision makers and such a range of the community present here today. Really looking forward to it. Just a very brief word on impact investing and what we do at Investing for Purpose. Please do come up and ask anything that you'd like at the end about the process, exactly what it is, how it's different to regular investing. What we basically do is look for purpose-driven founders that are doing wonderful things within climate and environment, education and culture, and inclusivity. And that's across Greece. So we provide, and we're in the process of becoming a fund, which will be Greece's Impact First Seed Capital Fund, which means providing between 300,000 and $1 million in funding to wonderful young Greek companies that need that growth funding to expand, to succeed, and most importantly for their impact to scale at the same time. So much of our work crosses over with resilient cities, almost at least resilient cities and economic regeneration outside of cities. So it's wonderful to have an expert panel with us today to talk about this very important topic. I want to warm welcome to Lina, Liakou and Maria Sitzoglou. Perhaps to start with, could you just introduce yourselves, what you do, and what you do at your organizations?
For sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Richard, for the invitation. I represent here and I work for the Resilient Cities Network. We are a global non-profit organization, and we work with more than 100 cities, local governments, metropolitan governments from across the world in helping them build their urban resilience. And we're going to talk more about that. We've been around for more than 10 years. Rockefeller Foundation has been our founding funder. I've personally also been the deputy mayor for the city of Thessaloniki during the mayorship of Yannis Boutaris, and I was also the deputy mayor for urban resilience and development planning, and I'm also a member of the board of the Hellenic Impact Investing Network. So there are many connections of why I'm here.
Thank you. And Maria?
Hello from me as well. Thank you for the invitation, Richard. So I'm Maria Sitzoglou. I'm an architect and urban designer. I have been working for quite a few years for different organizations, and I had the pleasure to work with Lina as well in the Resilient Cities network, and I have been focusing a lot on the urban context and the urban planning and urban design and how we can actually strengthen its resilience. And then I took the next step of founding my own practice to actually put in practice things that we're trying to put forward through policy and strategies. So we're working at the city level on actual urban interventions, bringing people on board, and how to achieve in a holistic perspective resilience. So happy to discuss it further.
Thank you so much. I mean, the whole urban regeneration topic is close to my heart. I spent about 10 years in the UK as part of a delivery team trying to improve the quality of housing and built environment and policy and planning kind of rules to help tighten the delivery of quality across so many stakeholders that are involved in placemaking. And the one thing that I took from 10 years in the sector, one of the many things, was just the timeframes involved in delivering at quality. And the timeframes are almost always outside of political cycles. So that's one of the interesting challenges, is how to frame effective regeneration over 10, 20, 30 years. And so I wanted to start, Lina, on the question of what is urban resilience? Why is it so vital? And why does it take that long-term perspective, say 20-year perspective?
So resilience as a concept is the ability of a system to not only survive, and adapt, but thrive in the face of the different shocks and stresses that can happen. Now, we talk about urban resilience specifically because cities is a system, right? Physical, non-physical. And cities is where opportunity exists. These cities are where innovation comes together, but cities also, as a system, has a very complex risk profile. So urban resilience is actually a way and a strategic approach of how you develop your city in order to meet your ambitions, to meet your vision, regardless of the various externalities and adversities that might come. Big shocks, like a big event, an earthquake, or long-term stresses, like poverty, or migration, or climate change, of course.
Thank you. I guess also there's that agenda of creating value over time. And that's something that maybe we can touch on a bit later, is that sort of long-term view about generating value for the municipality and the private sector while rolling out kind of quality placemaking. And on the perspective of somebody more on the ground delivering placemaking, just physically, what does it take to create a wonderful place, combining community, housing, commercial, urban public space that people love and take care of?
Well, it does take many things. You need to think holistically, and definitely it's not a top-down process, which it used to be. And it's business as usual, like a municipality decides for urban generation of one specific place and they just follow, something that we've been following decades ago, but now things have changed, and bringing urban resilience into the discussion, and like so many different things, you need to think ahead, you need to think long term. So while we're on the ground and putting the plan together, we need to think of the different pillars of a design, and this should take into account social aspects, environmental aspects, safety aspects, and it does take a lot to think into the really human scale. So we're going into the physical interventions, trying to make sure that who is the user who's going to use the space. I know we're going to talk about engagement a little bit later, but besides that, from the perspective of a designer and the engineers, we need to take into account how people are using the city. And from a space to turn it into a place, and that's the concept of placemaking, you need to make sure that what you are designing reflects the needs, not only the interests and what they want to see, but also to facilitate different movement needs, different needs of way of living, different ages, cultures, and so on.
That's wonderful. And obviously, trying to respond to the needs of stakeholders is something that, because of these timeframes, is something that needs to be constantly tapped into. I guess that's one of the main challenges, isn't there? That this is it's a 5-10 year program. Within that time, there are going to be shifts going on, and how do we try and mitigate that? So this idea of trying to connect in Greece, towns, cities, regions, municipalities, what are the kind of core challenges here in Greece? And can we bring out some examples of successful inclusivity in that process? Perhaps here in Ioannina, we can talk about the Net Zero Cities program and so on. What are the pathways to actually connecting the systems regionally and nationally?
So also the reason why we exist as an organization is to help cities learn together, but also problem solve together, and also bring their voices together. Because each city on its own, there's so much they can do. And a mayor on their own is also, if they have access to national government, if they are like politically affiliated, they might be able to do stuff. But our mission and the value is how you bring cities that actually have pretty much the same issues together in a consistent way and help them advocate for what they need. Now, we do it at a global level. We do it at a regional level. And now it's interesting that we see more and more activities happening at the national level. And this is, institutionally, you have associations like KEDE, which are part of the system, but we also see thematically coalitions and alliances that are happening in Greece for specific topics. And one of which is related to the European Commission mission for climate neutral and smart cities. So the EU mission, what it says that let's try to make our cities climate neutral. And let's do it earlier than what is our target as a commission. Let's put a target for 2030. So this is a pretty ambitious target. And they opened up almost a kind of a competition across Europe to select 100 cities. 6 of them are in Greece, which is pretty amazing. And each one of them worked with a consortium, and we are part of the consortium of Net Zero Cities, so we are helping cities in building their city climate contract, so their strategy, how they can become climate neutral. And they drafted their plans and their investment plans, which is amazing also because it's the first time that the city creates this kind of investment plan for climate neutrality. But then it was obvious that in order to actually move these plans forward, they had serious, not only funding issues, but policy barriers and challenges. So this is where the 6 cities in Greece, together with Lemessos, which is actually the only city from Cyprus, created Klimanet. And to say here that the National Ministry actually facilitated and enabled them to create this organization. Again, Klimanet, they launched it a couple of months ago in Athens, and the purpose is to have a vehicle to help them, on the one hand, collectively mature some of their key projects and investments, because more or less the systems that they need to transition are pretty much the same. Mobility, energy systems, natural assets. So, one hand, how they can collectively mature the projects and share, in a sense, technical expertise. And the second, how they can create one voice towards national government and how they can, in a very structured way, define what needs to change and how they can, how their plans can be implemented. Obviously, this will then have a ripple effect, not only for these 6 cities, but for the 1,000 cities across the country.
That's wonderful. So the Net Zero Cities as a sustainability agenda is actually doing a lot more than that in dealing with the necessary connectedness.
It is interesting because we see that across Europe. It's not only Greece. We see it in Spain, we see it in Romania, we see it in Sweden. We don't see it in some of the more mature markets, interestingly, but we see how the mission enabled or triggered this national cooperation between the mission cities and the national government. And this is one of the best examples we have had for the past decade, I think, of how something that in some cases might be considered that, like, and we heard also in the previous panel, like, okay, good to have, but not critical necessarily. We see how this actually becomes a critical agenda and how national governments are actually integral part of how cities are approaching their overall development pathways.
It's so important, and that sort of mutual learning, even as you said, between the kind of nations and cities. I remember back in the days I used to be organizing learning tours for ministers, for planners, for mayors and so on. We take them from the UK to various cities around Europe that were doing things much better than we were. And they were wonderful forums for just exchanging ideas and best practice, building bridges with other towns and cities, basically inspiring decision makers. I remember one time we went to Rotterdam. We produced some research into housing the elderly, kind of more holistically. At the time, this was the early 2000s, you can imagine the state of some of the elderly care homes that were in the UK. It was pretty poor, pretty depressing. And so we initiated this project called Happy, which is about housing the elderly, taking best practice from across Europe, and took a team of decision makers to Rotterdam to visit various schemes. And one of them was right on the river in Rotterdam. It was for over 65s. And it was a bright building with these bright balconies. We all went inside. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning. We got inside the building to meet one of the representatives of the residents. Couldn't find anybody. Went up the stairs to the common room, opened the door, and there were drinks, there was a party, they were having the best time. And I remember one of the male residents coming up to me and saying, it's just like, it's 2 to 1 kind of women and men in this place. I'm having the best time of my life as a 75-year-old. And for us, it was that kind of exchange of just perception that was so valuable in terms of what could be achieved with more forward-thinking societies. And on that note, sort of bringing in perspectives of community, Mario. Public consultation, bringing in stakeholders, it's obviously a very critical part of the process. How do you go about it effectively?
Yeah, well, I want to elaborate further from taking it from when Lina left it, like the national government, how important it is to create those alliances between cities and exchange. But then it takes a whole lot of work and investment going to actually on the ground and to the community, because to actually deliver urban resilience, you need to make sure that you have all this multi-stakeholder collaboration and like a clear path that what we are deciding, considering climate adaptation and all those different shocks and stresses that we see as projections, that actually come to the citizen, because this is where it all begins and where it all ends. So I need to highlight, I cannot stress that enough, how important it is to make sure that in all projects, from policy making to actual interventions, stakeholder engagement is key. And it doesn't mean that it has to be a very heavy and time-consuming process, but it has to be strategically planned during different phases of the project to make sure that people in the community are on board on the shifts we want to promote and engage. We are shifting the way, we're changing the way we're planning cities today. We're adding more nature-based solutions. If we don't introduce what this is about, like people who not engage will not adapt. We want changes in mobility. Like we are keep talking about that behavioral change without proper information, but also bringing on board the different communities, the different stakeholders, that they carry on different responsibilities in how the city runs. We will never be able to achieve this. So I have to say that strategies are very good because they set the vision, but at the same time, we need to make sure that there is a clear communication channel between all the different stakeholders that they need to have their part. And it doesn't come only with the rights of understanding and learning, but it also comes with the responsibility of the citizen as the user of the space and as a member of a community, and respecting the vulnerabilities of someone next to me and understanding what are the benefits I can get from a better city that I'm helping building. So, and I really need to add this because it's our niche of work, which is about working with children and teenagers. And I have to say that those age groups, they don't participate in those democratic processes as we know them, like elections and like being part or having their voices heard, but they are the next generation. They are the people who are going to face the worst of the impacts that we are seeing coming today from climate change. We need to make them and empower them. We need to help them, bring them on board, but not just going out there to ask them. Make sure that we deliver the information the way they can purely understand what's going on, and they can feel empowered to make their own decisions and be equal partners in a dialogue that we need to create. So I would say that education is really important. I would say that community engagement is very important, and also having a clear communication channel throughout the whole cycle of urban regeneration projects that we are working on mostly.
Super. And I think also that, as a municipality, if you're going to go for a quality agenda and deliver quality, it pays back, because you're engaging stakeholders who are then, whether it's residents, whether it's commercial, whoever it is, delivering beautiful places and cities and streets that people kind of really enjoy because they know they've been part of that process, means that they will naturally take care of them and take pride in the neighborhood. And over these long time frames we've been talking about, that is a sort of cost benefit to the municipality ultimately, right? So that's one of the sort of cost arguments that ends up being cost neutral, if not cost positive. On the subject of finance, Lina, can you tell us a bit about some successful examples of sort of urban financing?
Sure. And urban financing, as you can imagine, is a big topic. In the majority of the cases, there are two big arguments. The one, we do not have money, and the second is, we do not have capacity. So this is what you generally hear from the mayors. So I'm going to share an example that several cities in our network are actually doing, which is less about the money, and it's about how you manage the whole portfolio of your investments as a city. So it's the concept of cascading capital planning or better portfolio management. And in a proper private company, you can imagine, you know your investments, you manage them as a portfolio, right? We talk about it a lot at the impact investing ecosystem. Well, actually, in the cities and in local government, we don't do it like that. Usually, it is almost a bit random which projects get matured and get ready to go into the capital plan, right? Which is the technical program usually and the budget, or what project will actually be pitched to the ESPA and the European funding. But what several cities are currently doing is going a step below the actual capital plan, their capital plan, which is this is where you have the portfolio. This is where the city builds the systems and the capacity and the approach to understand and evaluate all their projects and investments as a totality, as a portfolio. In that way, they are able to understand which sectors need to mature quicker versus others, and understand it both in terms of timelines. Being able to say, oh, I actually have a lot of projects that support my water system, like short term, but I actually do not have like for the next 20 years, and I've seen that there are, the infrastructure is aging. Or to be able to talk about and understand what is the actual impact of the investments of the city. Because then you're the city leader, you say, okay, I want to build a city that is equitable. I want to build a city that is climate neutral. I want to build a city that is climate resilient, child friendly, and so on. Great. How are you able to monitor and evaluate the actual impact of the work you're doing? Because if you do it on a project base, you're going to miss the whole story. Mm-hmm. What you need is to be able to understand the whole portfolio. That is not just good to have, and it's good for the city to have. That is what then unlocks all the discussions with the private sector, private finance. Mm-hmm. Because the big problem of whether this is the EIBs of the world, or even go further to the more private investors, especially when they talk with the local government, which they don't usually, is that they don't understand what is the big picture. They don't understand how this contributes to the actual strategy of the city. They're not able to understand what has been the pathway, how did this project came about, how it was matured, and then why you, the mayor, is pitching it to me, for me to give you a loan. So we see more and more how cities are building these portfolio management systems. It takes a lot of work. It's not easy. But and this is where also the national government needs to help, this is where international organizations can help and support in creating blueprints of how this can happen, in order to help the cities actually better manage the limited investments that they currently have. Because if they cannot do that, then it's impossible to say, okay, now take the billions to implement your whole plan.
So you need a rigorous process of capturing all that data, making it very accessible, and once people can see those financial trends and the value trends, again, overarching political cycles, this is in 10, 20-year cycles.
But it's a management system change here that is needed, because it's both even an IT, you need an IT system to do it. Then you need, for example, project managers across the various agencies. Then you need a dedicated actual office that monitors that. Yeah. So there are multiple layers.
Verification and assurance.
Exactly, that are needed in order to put this together.
Yeah. It's actually kind of mirrors impact investing, in that the whole point is that we're delivering, for commercially viable companies that also deliver impact, and the measurability of that is absolutely critical to the whole equation, because that's the whole agenda. Is encouraging the lifeblood of a lot of this change, which is young, innovative companies delivering very often in the impact sector for communities, for the environment, for education, and so on. That is the glue that basically delivers resilient cities, right? Beyond policy. We have limited time, but just maybe a final question, and it's one people often...
Richard, may I add something to this? Because we're talking a lot about municipalities, but it's also working closely with them. It's also important that this portfolio can be enriched with the portfolios that other sectors are actually doing in the city at the same time. So many times mayors feel overwhelmed that they need to do everything, and municipal departments feel overwhelmed that they need to lead all the processes. But the truth is that the municipality needs to be the enabler of bringing together. So it's really important to make sure that you have all those connections with all your champions from communities, from the market, from the private sector, from organizations, philanthropies, everyone coming together to create this system. We talked about a system. It's not just one. It's like it is the leadership, but they need to make sure what's going on, to make sure that the infrastructure they are investing in is actually accommodating the needs and the perspectives and the visions of all the different stakeholders acting in the city. So
you answered my question, which is one systemic change that we need. And the question is, how do we fund that, right? How is that funded predominantly, right? And Lina, for you, what's if there was one thing at a policy level that would free up this sort of acceleration to the transition that we need? I know it's a hard one, but what are the obvious roadblocks that could be solved in, say, the next couple of years?
This is a hard one because there are many. And I just want to say that local governments in Greece are the most deprioritized level of the public sector. They do not have they cannot manage directly their funds, they cannot increase their revenue base. They are not able to hire who they want to hire in order to get the necessary technical expertise. You know that the mayor, when they come on board, they can actually hire one person, which is the general secretary of the city. That's it. The rest is the public sector. You cannot change that. But then you're asking the local government to be more ambitious than even the European Commission and governments in their climate transition, or integrate the new communities, or expand, or manage their natural assets. You cannot do that with having literally no tools and no direct power. So actually, it's about decentralization, metropolitan development, metropolitan governance, especially in the big urban systems like Athens and Thessaloniki. That's key to unlock a lot of the problems that exist, especially in managing the unified systems.
And maybe innovation in the private sector to try and deliver some of this technology.
Yeah, but the city needs to be able to manage it in order to be able then to have discussions with the private sector and innovators in how they can come in. If they cannot manage it, they have no say.
Lots to work on. We've run out of time. Thank you so much, Lina and Maria. It's been lovely to talk with you. And the discussion will continue. I think it's a coffee break now. Again, do feel free to come up. If you're interested in impact investing, what it means, please come up and just have a chat with myself or Anna, who's on stage later, and Marcos. But yeah, thank you. Have a good coffee break.
Thank you.